Hey guys, and welcome back to Pickle Juice. Today I've got an old buddy of mine on, who at one point was a boss and now is a buddy. And I think maybe
Fair.
at 2 points was a boss perhaps, but now a buddy. Yeah, so
Well,
yeah,
great. It's good to see you again, Andy.
absolutely, Steve. So Steven Ledgerwood, as is written down here in my notes, or I refer to him as Steve or Steve-O,
Steve.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve is the CEO of Capsule, which is a CRM tool for small to medium-sized businesses, volume SaaS model. Myself and Steve go way back. Steve worked at companies such as Immersis, for example. Before that, he was with Smart Focus. I got to know Steve back in the days of Immersis when I was leading global demand generation. Steve was running the UK and Nordics office, if I'm not mistaken, there, running the entire operations there and revenue, etc. So we got to know each other pretty well back then. And then we both worked on the same leadership team at a direct competitor of Immersis, which was Exponia. And we both have horrendous PTSD afterwards. I'm joking, no. We both had a great time there and seen some good growth. And we've got quite a few stories to tell, and we've had many a whiskey to talk about those particular stories, just the two of us. And now Steve has been working as a chief revenue officer for the past couple of years at a number of fast growing SaaS businesses before joining Capsule as the CEO. Was it almost 2 years ago now, Steve, or how long?
Basically, yeah, about 2 years.
Yeah. So there you go. So my friend, my buddy, Steve Ledgerwood. So thanks for coming on, Steve.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for the intro. Pretty good. Well done.
Thanks very much, man. Thanks very much. So yeah, as you might have recognised, Steve is South African, but we won't hold that against him.
That's okay. Luckily, you haven't called me Australian. One of my colleagues once called me Australian. He soon left the business after that. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But so look, how are things going over Capsule?
I think they're going well. There's obviously some things that we have to work on. But as a CRM itself, we're learning that CRM has always been such a hard thing for most businesses because it is quite complex in terms of what data goes into that and how it's used. And you're only as good as the data that's inputted into that specific solution. And so I feel like Capsule's a really good solution for people who are looking to be able to utilize CRM as a solution, and the uniqueness of the fact that we're quite easy to use and it's quite a simple formula if it compared to other technologies and competitors. I think we're having a good time. We're growing steadily. Again, it's not as strong as we'd like, but we're growing steadily and we're growing global. And in comparison to other products that are very focused on our ICP, which is SMEs, I think we're in a good shape.
Yeah, I think in that specific space right now, we spoke just before this, SMEs is tough right now. Everyone's pinching the purse strings a little bit tighter. They're not necessarily making investments in technology, and CRM is an incredibly crowded space, right? That's the thing. The good news is, though, you've got a very cost-effective solution, right? So when we're talking about pinching the purse strings, like just as a disclaimer here as well, I did some work in the past with Capsule, and so I know the product well, and I know the sort of strategy moving forward and so on. So it's also interesting because they also have this like marketing automation element to it with Transpond, right? So like that's something that's a bit unique about you guys in comparison to some of the other players on the market, right? So like how has that been faring for you? Because Transpond as well was an acquisition, right? A couple of years ago, which brings its own challenges, right? And trying to incorporate that into the business and package everything together can be a bit of a challenge. But how's the journey with the marketing automation piece on top of the B2B CRM going for you guys?
So let me start from the beginning. I think you are right. The CRM space is super crowded. We have currently around 800 different competitors in the mix. And if I'm honest, a lot of the solutions in those 800 are really good. And then we have the behemoths that are, the monopoly of the world, namely Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, and then you get complex solutions that are enterprise, but SAP, etc. And so there's a lot of there's a lot of really good competitors, and there's a lot of them. So to create your own space in that world is obviously very difficult. The added difficulty is that because of our ICP, we don't have an outbound sales structure. So we don't have a big sales team that is going out to target specific companies, because we can't justify the time spent on these low value deals. So a lot of our growth comes from people seeing us online and then coming to us directly to our website and then signing up for a trial. So a lot of the efforts we're making is around brand recognition, recommending from people that are currently using us. We're looking at partnerships in more detail. So, a lot of it is quite difficult. So our actual value proposition has to be very, very specific to a particular target audience. Otherwise, it's very hard to be able to, be different in the mix of so many different CRMs. And like you said, one of the things we've realized is that a lot of people, they come from spreadsheets and they wanted to use something that's easy to understand and so that they can get the value really quickly. So we've built our system very specifically to meet the need of people who are using a spreadsheet and need a better system than they currently have. And CRM is something that they need to work to, but they don't want to be confused by it. And in the same vein, we have a marketing solution that we did acquire about 4 years ago that is speaking to the needs of the same ICP. They are looking for something that's really easy to use, a MailChimp-esque type solution, but not as complex as MailChimp's become. More in the back in the day when MailChimp was super easy to use, very simple. You can connect the dots really quickly with different systems. And those are the types of things that we need for our ICP. And we're finding it really, really encouraging to see that they are very quick to see the value that they have both in Capsule and then also in Transpond. And they're using it connected to each other in a very tangible way. So yeah, I think it's been a really good and successful journey.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's cool. It's like you just mentioned something there that struck me a little bit, because when we're talking about volume SaaS brands, it's quite often the case, and definitely in your guys' case, that okay, you mentioned people are coming from Excel and want a tool that's easy for them to use and to make the jump from that tool to your tool. Now, your goal should be that those businesses are growing so much and so quickly that at some point in the future they will need to go to another tool which is not made for SME, right? And that's always the problem. Always the problem in volume SaaS. What's your thoughts on that? Is it that's just part of the life cycle? That's just part of how it works, or is it let's try to offer them more to keep them stickier for longer?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we grapple with all the time. In our world right now, we are looking at creating more cohorts in our customer profiles, and we're looking at and analyzing when people come from a spreadsheet or when they come from different CRMs. So what we're realizing is that actually a lot of people or a lot of companies don't want to be with HubSpot because it's too complex for them. And they don't want to be with a Salesforce or a Pipedrive because it's too complex for them. They're wanting something that's just easy to use and easy to get value from. So we're actually seeing a lot of the trend where we're seeing a lot of people come from those systems and using our system because it is easy to use and easy to understand. And so what we've realized from that point is that we have different segments of customer profiles that need and have used CRM and value that, but they're probably looking for a few extra things that could help them just continue with the journey with us for a longer period of time. And so we're looking at those things that we're developing in our product. Things like, for instance, our reporting is something that we're working on. It was light, in my opinion, when I first joined 2 years ago, and we've really come a long way to be able to support the needs of people who are looking for more advanced reporting and analytics across a group of teams, across their company structure. And we're looking for other things that will basically fit the needs of what they're trying to look for, but over a longer period. So if I were to answer your question in this way, we are probably looking to keep them for as long as we can until it becomes a need where they have to create a big customized ecosystem that supports not just the CRM need, but everything else that is linked to that. And at that point, they're probably looking for something that is more complex in design, that probably takes 18 to 24 months to set up. And at that point, they don't want to be able to switch from that solution at all, right? So yeah, hopefully that's answered that question.
Sure. Let's go back to like one of the challenges that you'd mentioned there, like, or that we spoke about already, is around the SMB right now, and it's tough to get people interested in the product, etc. Like, I know, having worked together with your marketing team, like, great bunch of guys, and the stuff that they're doing is really good, and they're managing to grow things, and it's like, I really enjoyed working with the guys. Like, what are some of the challenges that they're seeing now? Like, what are some of the challenges for you as a CEO trying to manage that team? Like, what's currently going on?
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest challenge we have is making sure that we have enough volume coming through our website. And volume are two different categories. One is awareness. So we're getting visitors to our website, and they're realizing that Capsule is a brand that can support CRM, and interacting with those people that are the relevant audience, but they may not be ready to buy. And then that's converting from a visitor, so traffic, to creating more signups. Those are the things we always struggle with, because we need the volume of visitors, and we also want to create more brand awareness, because we know that there's a long-term play in when people are reviewing their CRM, that they would look for Capsule as an alternative potential. But we also need the sign-up traffic to flow as well, because that's our bread and butter. And so we're trying to always, I think, pivot from brand awareness, so social media, blog posts, educational pieces, webinars, podcasts like we're doing today, to really creating, that's what you call your top of funnel, and then we're creating more mid funnel and bottom funnel, where people are really at the stage where they're trying to review and are actively seeking. And so that's the things that we're always trying to pivot from, and that's the hardest thing, I think, is trying to get the balance right, where we are needing to invest in both of those scenarios. But it's just how much, when do we pull and push, those two different categories. And then the other thing is really important. Capsule is a Manchester-based headquartered business. We are a really, really good business. We have 12,000 customers globally in 100 different countries. So we have essentially made it in the world. Everyone knows us globally, but we're not very well known as people, as our competitors in the US, and in countries which are different languages, right? So it's always the conversation around, where do we invest in? Do we invest more of our time in how to push the US more, how to create more additional languages? We've just released Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese, and French, to see if we can get more of a local based user group, and it's always just all those factors. How do we always create as much drive from those things as possible? There's a lot of things that we try to create. It's just, what do we prioritize? Yeah.
And so that's the challenging thing, with a small enough team as well, right? That's the thing. And VC backed, right? If I'm not mistaken, VC backed.
PE backed.
So, but it's not that the money is endlessly flowing either, right? Like, there is restraints there. It's not like it was back, I don't know, 10 years ago, right? Things are a little bit different nowadays. But okay, interesting. Thanks, Steve. Go ahead. You got.
Yeah, I think we just on that narrative, I think as a CEO, the PE-backed scenario is very good, actually. I think it provides a really good balance between growth and EBITDA, and profitability. We are very focused on our EBITDA ratios and our numbers. And even today in the VC world, I think that's changed as well. I think it's very focused on profitability as well. But PE has always been like that. So they don't heavily invest in the front end to grow, and then at the expense of profit. they've always been a good mix. So probably slower growth, they're happy with as long as the profitability and EBITDA ratios are good. And so, yeah, that's a conversation we have with all the time. What should we invest in now that's going to give us the next best foot forward, rather than the crazy times we had at some of the companies that maybe we shouldn't talk about, where, you just invested in everything and just hoped that one thing would stick.
Yeah.
It's no longer the PE specific type of profile isn't like that.
Great thing with that though, Steve, is we learned what didn't work.
Very much so.
And we had a lot of cash to do it with, and
we had a lot of fun and stress along the way. So yeah, I'd agree.
Stress? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why I have grey hair and I'm not even 40. So yeah, so yeah. Let's talk about quickly, just before we finish up, just around going from a chief revenue officer position to holding the main seat in the house, let's say. As the CEO, how has that been for you? How's that progression been for you?
It's been a relatively smooth transition, and my reason for saying that is because I have been a chief revenue officer, but as you indicated, when in a few businesses I was also an overall manager or a regional manager, right? So in Amasis, I managed not just all of our commercial functions, but everyone in those regions. So there was a natural understanding of how to speak and motivate and incentivize different types of functions differently, right? So the transition wasn't as hard because I've done those things and I've had experience in that. I think the biggest change really from owning commercial, like I used to owning everything, is that obviously the buck really stops with you. There isn't anyone else. And so you've got to really think through all of your theories and your planning to make sure that you're actually on board with everything that's happening in the business. Whereas when I was a CRO, obviously everything was just focused on what I needed, and it was in spite of everything else. And of course, I was always quite balanced in my approach to say, actually, we should be utilizing those things. But, ultimately I was measured on my commercial progress. Whereas as a CEO, there's a very, very different mix. So I think it's owning everything, buck stops with you. And then I think my relationships with my investors are much more key in terms of how I can position things, what I should invest in, how I should go about planning that, what we're going to be doing over the next 2 or 3 years. The CEO profile is much more of a longer term play, whereas the CRO is sometimes more of a 12 to 24 month window. We're looking at things down the line in 3 or 4 years time, right? So I'd say that those are the two biggest things. And when the buck stops with you, it's lonely. It's not easy. Sometimes you get lots of great feedback and there's lots of people giving you their opinions, but at the end of the day, you have to make those decisions as to how you see it, and that can be quite challenging.
Yeah, I mean, that could be tough, I can imagine. Like, we've spoken to a couple of people here that are also in CEO positions of numerous sizes of organizations, from very, very large organizations to smaller organizations. And it can be a challenge. Like, who do you go talk to? Do you have any mentors? For example, I spoke with Ohad a couple of weeks ago. Ohad.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that he has some mentors or people that he can go and, or at least when he was with Emarsis as the CEO, he would then be able to go and speak with, like, hey, have you seen this before? Like, what did you do in this situation? Like, is this the right way of dealing with this situation? Because you mentioned that loneliness thing, that could be a real factor, right? Like, and if you haven't done it before, like, you're the first time CEO, right? You may not have been in that situation before. Or do you have people you lean on?
So that I have an amazing support structure. I don't have a mentor. I think I should. So that is definitely something I should probably take into account quickly. But the best thing I have right now is I have an amazing chairman. Now, in a specific scenario like this, you always have a board, and then you have a chairman, and the chairman is meant to be the crossover between the operational exec team and then the board, right? And the best thing that I have experienced in my journey with this particular chapter of my life is that I have an amazing chairman who is there to be able to really connect the dots, speak through all of the ideas, be a proper soundboard, challenge everything that I'm doing, but also he is fully supportive of anything. So we talk about stuff, we rationale everything out, and then he's fully supportive because obviously we've clicked together, and that has been really, really useful in my journey. There's many things as a new CEO that I don't know, and he's obviously done this plenty of times before. So, and he was a CEO himself before he started becoming a chairman, and so that's been really useful to be able to just utilize all of his skill sets and his experience to be able to continue the journey in a positive way. And then the other thing I would also say is, instead of a mentor, I do have groups. I would call out people like Sass Rise, Ryan, who used to who did really well at an email marketing company previously. He's started this group, and those people are meeting on a weekly basis, talking about things that they're challenging, that are challenging at the time, and they speak through those. It's not always the best forum because you don't know those people really well, but it's good because there are people that are experiencing the same thing at the same time, and they have great experiences around what they're doing differently. And so that's been useful for me as well. So I have tried to position getting groups of people externally together that have been helpful, and that's been really good. The last thing that I'd probably say, which is what Ohad would also say, because I love Ohad, is that you need a good team around you. I have an amazing exec team around me. My CFO is fantastic. My CTO is amazing. My marketing function, they're really good, so it's good to have that support structure around me. I have a founder that I took over from. He's the founder of the business. I took over from him as the CEO. He is still in the business. He lets me make all the decisions, and he just loves it because there's no longer any of this pressure that he has to make the final decision. But he is the most supportive person as the founder, just trying to work this thing through with me. So those people that you have in your team, especially in your exec team, are really important in terms of how you can just, cope with all of the daily pressures, and also, this thing called a CEO.
Yeah, that's good, Steve. Thanks for that. There was one thing you mentioned there before that I didn't want to interrupt you on it. Like when you're in the CRO, when you were in the chief revenue officer role, that that was just your sphere of influence, right? And if you didn't hit your number, you could always blame marketing. So that's what I was going to say.
I mean,
not to discount
I still blame you, really. I mean, that will go down in history. Yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a time where you did blame me, though, Steve. I will say, as you being the chief revenue officer, me being VP of marketing, there was never any time where it was like throw marketing under the bus, which is against the norm, right? That's the thing, and we were under pressure as a commercial organization, let's say, and hitting targets were tough, right?
I mean, so, I didn't throw you under the bus in that particular event because we were all in it, but I may or may not have thrown you under the bus at a Masters, but I won't say anything about that. Speak to her.
You didn't do it to my face, at least. That's the thing, But hey, look, man, thanks so much for your time. It's been really appreciated. And obviously, it's been great speaking as always, man. Next time, we need to make sure there's a whiskey in front of us.
Yes. Yes.
And we need to make sure we'll finish on this little tidbit. Remember the time when we went? We of course you remember the time when myself and Steve met in a whiskey bar in London, and Steve had never really tasted Irish whiskey before. It wasn't really his tipple, more of a Scotch guy. And we were sitting at a bar and we said, let's try out a couple of different Irish ones. And of course, being Irish, I know my Irish whiskey. And there was one particular bottle which was Middleton, which anybody that knows good whiskies will know that Middleton is up there with one of the better whiskies that you can get on the planet, and it's also incredibly expensive.
Yes.
And that's just for a normal bottle of Middleton. This was, I think, a 1983 bottle of Middleton or something like that. I can't remember what exact year it was.
1988. I still have the picture, so
1988.
I know it's,
1988. There you go. And we asked the barman how much it was for a glass, and he told us how much it was for a glass. And we thought, Jesus, no, we can't pay for that. about 4 or 5 whiskeys later, cue Steve and me looking at each other and say, it's time for the Middleton. So,
so let's just be clear. It's not a glass. It's a dram. Let's just be clear.
Exactly. So a glass is this, right? So for 2 or 4 centiliters. So we're not talking about a huge amount. And that was the most expensive drink I've ever bought, by the way. And I think it will remain the most expensive drink I've ever bought. But
I was just glad that you said that you'd fit that bill, because I wasn't going to be doing that.
But it changed your life ever since, Steve. It changed your life.
If I'm honest, you are right. I'm still a Scotchman, but I do believe that I have a really good variety of tastes now based on our experiences with Irish whiskey. So yeah, thank you for that. That was good.
Sure. All right, mate. Look, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. And guys, this has been another episode of Pickle Juice. Steve, we'll send all your details out as well, so people can find you on LinkedIn on that. And go check out Capsule CRM. Steve, thanks a million, mate. It's been great.
Thank you, man. Speak to you soon.